whispered in a voice softer than sleep. This is Gentle Confessions, where every story holds a piece of your heart. Tear. The door that never opened. She used to leave her door open. When she was little, maybe 5 or 6, she would always insist on sleeping with the door cracked just enough for the hallway light to sneak through. She said it made her feel safe, like the light could chase away the nightmares before they reached her pillow. And every night, without fail, I'd pass by her room and whisper, "Good night, my love," even when she had already fallen asleep. That door became a symbol of something soft between us, something unspoken, but always there. But that was before everything changed. Now, the door stayed closed. Not just closed latched. Not just latched locked. At first, I told myself it was normal. Teenagers need space, boundaries, privacy. That's what all the parenting books said. Right. But no book ever told me how to handle the silence. It crept in slowly, like fog. 1 missed dinner, then 2. Conversations shortened into nods, then into nothing. Eye contact became rare. Her face, once full of spark and sarcasm, began to turn away from mine like the moon turns from the sun. I began to hear the click of the door each night. Soft, final, click. And in that small, brittle sound, I felt something inside me fold. Something I couldn't quite name. I remember one night vividly. I had made her favorite soup. Tomato and basil. Just the way she liked it when she was younger, creamy. Not too hot, with a splash of milk to cool it down. I placed the bowl gently on the hallway floor outside her door. Knocked once, lightly. Nothing. I waited. 10 minutes. Maybe more. Still nothing. In the morning, I found the bowl still there. Cold. Untouched. The crust of the bread I had toasted was stiff and dry. I stared at it for longer than I should have. It felt like looking at a relic, like something once holy, now forgotten. I wish I could say I understood why the door stayed shut, but I didn't. There was no dramatic fight, no harsh words exchanged, just distance. Like watching the tide pull back further each day, without ever knowing when it started. I tried to reach her in the little ways I could. Fresh towels left folded outside. Notes scribbled on pastel paper. Hope school wasn't too rough today. A mug of cocoa. A book I thought she might like. But there was no response. No thank you. No knockback. Only the door. Always the door. There was a weight to that wood, not physical, not tangible, but something heavier, like every unspoken word had been carved into it. Every missed moment, every sigh I swallowed. Some nights, I stood outside it longer than I care to admit. Just standing, holding a thought in my chest, waiting for the courage to whisper it. But then thinking, what if she didn't answer? What if the silence came back louder? So I'd walk away. Again. And each time I did, I carried a little less of myself with me. I told my sister once, over coffee, that I felt like I was living with a ghost. She's still there, I said, but not with me. My sister didn't know what to say. Neither did I. There was a Saturday morning, quiet and gray, when I caught a glimpse of her. She had cracked open the door just enough to place out a garbage bag. Her face was barely visible through the sliver, but her eyes met mine. Just for a second. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. Just tired. So very tired. And before I could say anything, she closed the door again. Click. But that moment lingered in me. It meant something. I just didn't know what. I started noticing the little shifts. A blanket I had folded and left was no longer outside. The tea I brewed was gone the next morning. Small things. Easy to miss. But to me, they were lifelines. And yet, the door stayed shut. That same door I once peeked through to watch her sleep now kept me out of her world entirely. I used to count the days since I heard her voice, sometimes in weeks, then months. There's something surreal about not hearing your child's voice in your own home. It plays tricks on your memory. You start to forget the rhythm of their laugh, the way they used to say your name. You wonder if you imagine the sound of them at all. You start whispering their name under your breath, just to remember how it feels on your tongue. Mama. The word echoed in my heart like a wish. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Maybe because if you're listening, you know this kind of silence too. The kind that isn't loud or dramatic, just hollow. Empty plates. Quiet dinners. That quiet pain of loving someone who's right there but unreachable. Maybe you've stood outside a door, too. Maybe you've waited for a sound, a word, a sign. And maybe, like me, you've kept whispering anyway because hope, even the smallest sliver, is louder than silence when you let it be. Because even if the door never opened, even if she never answered again, I knew I'd be here, still whispering, still leaving the light on, just in case. Tier 2. The quiet things I did for her. They say love is loud. They say it's in the grand gestures, the declarations, the dramatic moments that swell with music and movie scenes. But that was never how I loved her. My love for her was always quiet. It was folded into pillowcases, stirred gently into soup, tucked into the corners of ordinary days where no one could see, especially her. After the door closed, after the silence settled in like a second skin over the walls of our home, I began to speak a new language, one made of small, invisible things, and I spoke it fluently. I started with the basics. Each morning, I made sure her favorite cereal was stocked, even though she hadn't asked for it in months. Cinnamon granola with dried cranberries. She used to eat it in a bowl 3 times the size of her appetite, perched on the kitchen stool with one foot tucked underneath her. I kept the box there, top shelf, always unopened, yet never expired, as if I was waiting for the day she'd come down, sleepy-eyed, and pour herself a bowl again. She never did, but I bought it anyway. Laundry became something sacred. I would wait until I heard her shuffle to the bathroom, or catch the sound of the washing machine thrum after midnight, her way of doing things when no one was around. In the morning, I'd find the basket half full, damp clothes hanging like wilted flowers, and so I'd take over. I never touched her room, never crossed that line, but I'd gather the clothes carefully, sort them by fabric, by scent. I used the lavender softener she once told me made her feel like she was wrapped in clouds. It was the one thing she had never objected to, even in the silence. Sometimes, when I folded her sweaters, I'd press them gently to my face for a second, like I was hoping to catch a memory. I never did, but I folded them anyway. She had this hoodie faded blue, with a tear near the wrist. She wore it every winter for 3 years straight. Even when it was too small. Even when the zipper jammed. I patched it one night. Sat in the quiet of the kitchen with a needle and thread, tracing the worn fabric like I was tracing time. I left it outside her door. Folded. Mended. The next day, it was gone. No thank you. No knock. Just gone. And for me, that was enough. I replaced the hallway light bulb with a warmer tone. She didn't say anything, but I noticed it stayed on longer after she passed through. Maybe it felt less harsh, less interrogating. Little things. Always little things. I made playlists, too. Curated ones with songs she used to hum before dinner, before the distance. I played them low on weekend mornings, letting them spill softly into the living room just enough for the melody to drift under her door. Sometimes I imagined her pausing, just for a second, hearing that tune and remembering something golden, something before. Maybe she rolled her eyes. Maybe she smiled. I'll never know. But I played them anyway. I stocked her favorite shampoo. I switched to scent-free detergent when I noticed her shirt started smelling like her own instead of mine. I researched therapists, printing names and sliding them under her door with handwritten notes that read, "Only if you ever feel like talking. No pressure. I love you." I even ordered her new headphones when her old ones frayed, matching the exact model and color she used to love. They sat outside her door for 3 days before they disappeared. Another silent yes. You might think this was desperate, that I was grasping at breadcrumbs, hoping for a loaf. But when you love someone, truly love them, you start to understand that not all love needs to be received to be real. Sometimes love is just given, quietly, steadily, with no promise of return. There were nights when I'd sit on the floor outside her door with a book, reading softly, not loud enough for her to hear every word, but enough to know that I was there. That if she cracked open her heart even just a little, she might catch the story drifting through. One night, I read the chapter where the mother character says, "Sometimes I watch you like the moon watches the sea, knowing I can't touch you, but hoping my light still reaches." I cried softly after that one. Not because I was sad, but because it felt like the truest sentence I had ever heard. I started keeping a notebook, a kind of journal, not for myself, but for her. Each page was a letter I never sent. Some were mundane. "You left the sink running last night. I turned it off." Some were hopeful. "I heard you laugh through the door. It sounded like music again." Some were raw. "I miss you, even when you're just a wall away." I plan to give it to her someday. Maybe on her birthday. Maybe when she opened the door for real. Or maybe never. Maybe it was just for me. One afternoon, I saw her shadow pass by the kitchen doorway. She didn't come in. Didn't say anything, but I saw her pause. Just briefly. Her head tilted toward the counter, where I had left a cup of tea steamed perfectly. No sugar. Just the way she used to drink it when we'd sit on the porch and watch the rain. The cup was gone when I returned. I sat down, held the warm circle it had left on the counter like it was a message. Sometimes healing doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. In the sound of socks on tile. In the weight of a door slightly less closed than usual. In the way grief changes shape from sharp to soft. In the things we do that no one sees. I never told anyone about these things. Not because I was ashamed, but because they were mine. Tiny rituals. Little prayers. Ways I reminded myself that she was still mine, even if from a distance. That love, when done gently enough, could still cross the cracks. That it could still be heard even through a locked door. She never thanked me, not in words. But the cocoa cups disappeared. The books I left were missing. The blanket stayed folded on her bed when I passed by the open crack one morning. The smallest light. And in that moment, I didn't need fireworks. I didn't need an apology. Or an explanation. Or even a tearful hug. I just needed that crack of light. That soft, almost invisible yes. Because love, I've learned, doesn't always knock. Sometimes, it lingers. It breathes in folded clothes, in songs played through walls, in teacups and stitched sleeves and silent notes. Sometimes, love just waits. Tier 3. The day. She almost said something. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't feel like absence. It feels like holding your breath, like standing at the edge of something about to break open. And that was what that morning felt like. It was early, the kind of early where the sky is still unsure of itself, caught between soft gray and the first pink blush of day. I was in the kitchen, barefoot on cold tiles, hands wrapped around a mug I hadn't yet sipped, and then I heard it. Not words, not footsteps, just a rustle, a pause, the subtle shift of presence, like someone had entered the same emotional space as you, even if they hadn't stepped into the room. She stood at the threshold, not quite inside, not quite gone. She was wearing that blue hoodie again, the one I mended in silence weeks ago. The sleeve still carried the tiny, uneven stitch I'd sewn too quickly, afraid I might undo something fragile. Her hair was tied up, messily. Her eyes were softer. Or maybe it was the light. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I let the air decide whether this was real. She looked at the table, not at me. There were 2 slices of toast, one with almond butter and a banana sliced too carefully it was her favorite, even if she hadn't eaten it in months. I had placed it there without thinking. Or maybe with all the thinking in the world. And she saw it. She didn't roll her eyes, didn't sigh, didn't retreat. She just sat down, slowly, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, like there wasn't a canyon of silence stretching between us. I kept my gaze on the window, watched as the wind stirred the trees, tried not to count every breath, tried not to hope too loudly. She reached for the toast, broke a piece off, ate in silence. My mug stayed warm in my hands, untouched. Not a word was spoken. But in that moment, the kitchen was alive with everything we weren't saying. Then, she cleared her throat. Not dramatically. Just enough. My eyes flicked toward her before I could stop myself. She looked at me, and in that split second, there was something open in her gaze. A crack. A flicker. As if she was about to say something. Something real. Something sharp and soft and overdue. But it didn't come. She closed her mouth again, swallowed, looked down at the toast like it was suddenly too loud to eat. And I felt it. The sentence that hovered in the air like vapor. The word that could have started everything, or ended it. I wanted to reach across the table, to place my hand on hers and whisper, "It's okay, whenever you're ready." But I didn't. I didn't want to scare it away. You don't chase a bird learning to land again. You stay still. You breathe slow. You let it trust the air. We sat there for a few minutes more. She finished the toast, stared at her hands, then stood up. And just before she turned to leave, she looked at me again and smiled. Not wide, not confident, but real. And then she whispered, "Thanks." That was all. Just one word. But it echoed through the walls of my heart like a bell that hadn't been rung in years. After she left, I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart or clutch at the moment like it would vanish. I just sat there, quietly, letting the warmth of her voice wrap around the silence that remained, letting it linger. It's strange, isn't it, how healing doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It tiptoes in on days like that, with toast, and soft hoodies, and a single whispered thanks. That afternoon, I walked past her door and noticed something different. It was cracked open, not wide, just enough to see a sliver of carpet, a bit of light. She had always closed it tight before, like a vault. But now, it breathed. I didn't push it, didn't peer in. I just paused, placed a small flower in a glass jar on the floor, beside the door. A daisy from the garden she used to tend, and I whispered, even though I knew she probably couldn't hear. "Anytime you want to talk, I'll be right here." Then I walked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I played the memory of her voice in my head like a lullaby. Thanks. I let it wash over me again and again, like a tide that didn't want to recede. I didn't need more. Not yet. That word, that smile, it was enough to rewrite every quiet thing I'd done before. It was proof that she had noticed, that she was still here, that we both were. And I thought, maybe love is like a garden after winter. You don't rip the soil open. You wait. You let it thaw. You watch for tiny green things to push up through the frost. And when they do, you whisper to them gently, "I see you. I'm still here. Keep growing." Tier 4. When I stopped holding my breath. There's a kind of breath that you don't realize you've been holding, until it leaves you. It was the next morning. Quiet again, but not empty. A quiet that held possibility. Like the space between tides. Like the hush before a bird sings again. I didn't expect anything. I had already learned the danger of expectations, how they can turn hope into weight, into disappointment. So I moved slowly that morning. I opened the curtains like I was touching something sacred, letting light spill across the hardwood like gold melting into the room. And for the first time in months, the house didn't resist the morning. I set the table again. Toast, fruit, tea instead of coffee, something softer. Not for her, not directly, but maybe for the moment. I sat, again, alone. But the seat across from me didn't feel so empty this time. It felt like it was holding space, waiting without rushing. Half an hour passed, then footsteps, not hesitant, not angry, just human. I didn't look up immediately. I didn't want to break the spell, but I saw her shadow stretch across the floor and touch the table. She sat, and this time, she looked at me first. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was a peace in the silence that didn't ask to be filled. It was the kind of silence that trusted the air. She sipped the tea, grimaced a little at the taste, and for some reason, we both laughed. Just a breath of laughter. And it was enough to remind me we were both still here. I think that's when I let go of the breath. The one I'd been holding for months, maybe even longer. The breath that had clenched itself deep in my chest. The breath of fear, of guilt, of not enoughness. It slipped away as I laughed with her, and I realized maybe I didn't need to fix anything. Maybe all I needed was to be still, to be present, to witness whatever this was becoming. That day, she came downstairs twice more. Once, for a charger. Once, just to stand on the porch for a while. I watched from the hallway as she tilted her face toward the sun. Eyes closed. She looked like herself again. Or maybe she looked like who she was becoming. Later that evening, I passed by her room. The door was ajar. Not just cracked open, but inviting. And on her bed was the old stuffed fox she used to sleep with as a child. It had been buried deep in her closet for years. I never asked why, but there it was resting on her pillow, worn and soft, like it had found its way back to the surface. I stood there just for a moment, then kept walking. Not everything needed to be touched or explained. Some things just needed to be seen. That night, I made dinner. A real one. With effort. With the recipe she used to request on her birthdays. I wasn't sure if she would eat it, but I made it anyway. And I lit a candle. And I played the quiet jazz she used to hum along to. I set 2 plates. And when I heard the soft creak of stairs, I smiled to myself. She didn't say anything. She just sat and picked up her fork and ate. No fanfare, no speeches. But that was the thing about healing. It never demands applause. Halfway through the meal, she paused and looked at me. Her eyes held a gentleness I hadn't seen in a long time. and she said, "This tastes just like I remember." 5 words. But they landed in me like a sunrise. After dinner, she helped clear the plates. She didn't have to, but she did. We moved around each other in the kitchen like a familiar dance. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. And it was enough. Later that night, after she'd gone to her room, I stayed by the kitchen window, holding my mug of tea, and I remembered what silence used to feel like, how it used to be filled with worry. Now, it felt like breath, like space, like a lullaby I didn't know I needed. Maybe that's what healing is. Not a destination, but a series of small surrenders. Letting go of the breath you thought would keep you safe. Making toast. Opening doors. Lighting candles. Saying thank you. And this tastes like I remember. That night, as I slipped into bed, I whispered into the dark, "Thank you for today." I didn't expect an answer. But somewhere in the house, I swear I heard the soft click of a door being left open. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't holding my breath anymore. I was finally breathing again. Tier 5. The night. She finally said it. That night, something felt different. I don't know if it was the way the air moved soft, like it was breathing with us, or the stillness in the house that didn't feel empty anymore, but full of something fragile and new. Maybe it was the candlelight flickering gently in the hallway, the same candle I'd been lighting each evening, more out of habit than hope. Or maybe it was just time. She hadn't come downstairs after dinner. Not unusual. But I felt her presence in the silence. I was about to turn off the lights and go to bed when I heard it. The creak of floorboards above. Slow footsteps. Then, a pause. And then, the softest knock. She stood there, framed by the hallway light, her hands loosely wrapped around a pillow, her eyes searching mine not for permission, but maybe for safety. "Can I sit with you a while?" she asked. I nodded. Didn't trust my voice. She walked in quietly and sat on the edge of the couch. Not too close. Not too far. Just there. And we stayed like that for minutes that felt suspended in time. No rush. No pressure. "I was scared," she whispered. I turned my head to her, but didn't say anything. Let her keep going. I thought if I spoke, it would all come out wrong, that I'd mess it up even more. Her voice shook, but she kept going. I wanted to say something so many times, but I couldn't find the words that didn't sound like anger. I reached over, gently placing my hand near hers, not on top, just beside, an offering. And then, she breathed, a deep, trembling breath, and she said it. The words I had carried like ghosts in my chest for months, the ones I had stopped hoping to hear. She said, "Mama." Just that. Soft. Tentative. Like touching something fragile that could break. "Mama." And my world tilted. Not because of the word itself, but because of what it meant. What it carried. Forgiveness. Memory. Connection. A thread tying us back together in the quietest way. I looked at her and didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because this moment was beyond tears. It was breath. It was presence. It was her voice, finally reaching me. She laid her head gently on my shoulder, like she used to when she was small, and I let my head rest against hers, afraid to move, afraid to wake up from this fragile magic. "I missed this," she whispered, and I answered, "I missed you." 3 words. But they held the weight of every bedtime story cut short, every argument that went too far, every silence we both filled with fear. She laughed soft and shaky. "Remember when I called you Mama Goose?" I smiled. "Only every day for 3 years." She nodded, closing her eyes. I think I stopped saying it because I didn't know who I was anymore. And I didn't want to take you with me into that confusion. We sat there, 2 people, bruised by time, but not broken. And in that stillness, the house breathed with us. She stayed with me until the candle burned low. And when she finally stood up to go, she turned to me in the doorway, smiled softly, and said one more time, "Good night, Mama." Like it was never gone. Like it had always been waiting. After she left, I didn't sleep. Not because I was restless, but because I wanted to hold on to that moment a little longer. I sat by the window, watching the stars, thinking about all the nights I'd prayed for just this. Not perfection, not answers, just one whisper, just one word, and I got it. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not loud, not cinematic, but whispered, offered, accepted. The next morning, the sun came in a little warmer, and I made 2 cups of tea again, one stronger, the way she likes it. I set them both down at the table, and I waited. Not with anxiety this time, but with peace, because I knew whether she came down or not, whether she said it again or not, I had heard it. And that was enough to begin again. If her voice moved you tonight, let yours echo in kindness. We'll be waiting in the quiet for the next confession.